keynote address by a very well-known architect, Christopher Charles Benninger. He's an architect that I've come across who had 3 distinct careers within his professional life.
Today I want to talk to you about 3 things. One is green buildings. It's something that we're all very interested in. Another one is in what I would call green cities. I'd even like to call them Griha cities now. And then green people, and by green people I don't really just mean people, but I want us to look a little bit at the possibilities of involving villages, as maybe Griha villages also. I think as people in Griha and the sustainable building movement, we need to move our strategies out a little to bigger scales, different areas of activity, probably so that we can have more impact and we could be covering more people. Last night we had a wonderful lecture on automatic solar shades between 2 pieces of glass, or inside an office, or outside. And then a lot of the technologies we use would actually only be affordable to less than 1% of the people in this country. So my worry is that the green building movement should not become an elitist movement. Now green buildings can be, in my opinion, 3 types. They can be green by nature, they can be scientifically green, or they can be green by numbers. Unfortunately, I've done one of the most numbered buildings in India, that is the Suzlon One Earth. But green by nature, I'm talking about buildings like this. This is the Alliance Francaise in Amber, a model. Now why I'm showing you the model is because you can see that all the light in this building comes from skylights facing north in Ahmedabad. There are no windows at all on the south, there are no windows in the east, there are no windows on the west. And the skylights also have ventilators to let the hot air out the top, and they drop light into spaces inside the building. And on the back north wall, they fold down and become windows over the north. And the wet areas, which are always a problem, particularly back in the 70s when I designed this, we plugged in small plugins you can see there. So the toilets and the basins were plugged into the wall in the back. And this project also had something I call a public domain. So when we talk about green, in our group we tend to talk about physical things, about recycling water, energy reduction, passive use of energy. But I also think we need to start about talking the aesthetics of green. A building, in my opinion, if it's just a glass box and it's got low E and it's got some sort of solar shades, but if it's an ugly building with no public domain, no interaction with nature, then it's not a green building. So I think we've got to expand our viewpoint. This building is green by nature, it has no air conditioning. There may be 1 or 2 fans stuck in some of the lower spaces, but there are not even fans here, and it doesn't need electric lighting. This is built back in 1973, 78. These are the pivoting doors out into that public domain. And as you can see, there's no windows, the light is dropping from the top. And so it's a very simple open space kind of structure for the Alliance Francaise, where they used to have their cultural programs and lectures and even teach French. So this is a green building which instantly uses not more than 7 materials. There is concrete, there's brick, there is some old MS window frames, glass, and hardly anything else. Life used to be very simple when we started practicing architecture. These are the plugins in the back, the wet areas, so there's no water, there's no wet areas inside the building. And these are the glass coming down the back. Now when I designed this, we only had 3 kinds of glass in India. Bad, poor, and even worse. The bad was a clear glass which had waves in it. This is a kind of a blue glass, and there was another glass that had wire in it so that people couldn't break it easily. This is the Center for Development Studies and Activities. Now, as you can see in this picture, when it was built, it was actually outside of the city of Pune, on top of a plateau, looking into the Western Ghats. And this is a kind of a podium where people can gather, again, a public domain. I think a public domain is a very important part of green buildings. And it's got a Puraji Sagar statue addressing the space. And these are basalt 18-inch stone walls running east and west, so the sun falls on those thick walls. And then the rooms and buildings run north of that with verandas protecting them from the sun. So this is one of the buildings. There's a little amphitheater off of a classroom. all glass-out walls, again running east and west, and a lot of landscaping that integrates with the buildings. A lot of public domains, a lot of places for people. Artwork. I think everyone who's designing a building here should spend some percentage of your budget on artwork, but I think having a Parajasagar statue in the courtyard and having this old Zoroastrian marriage saman, these are sort of important clues to which country we're in, where we are. And this is one of the verandas. It's shaded by a small roof, and the doors slide open so that the inside space becomes part of the outside space. Again, our offices, this is a bird feeder. So these are green buildings by nature. CDSA electric bills in the hot season run sometimes never more than 5,000 rupees a month. There are no fans in the rooms. The lights never turn on in the daytime, so you get enough light from these side windows to light up this bit. If we want to stop so many cars in CC and Pune, we require so much parking. Even a 5,000 square foot plot would have to have 10 parking spaces. My argument is, don't allow parking spaces. Make people suffer. They'll stop buying cars and they'll start taking public transit. But no, we want to have our cake and eat it. So this is green by science, and here I'm going to use a couple of my buildings first, like the Cochin refineries, where we did sun shading. Last night we were talking about sun shading. This is in the mid-90s. It's a building which has Hunter Douglas louvers put completely around the building. So virtually no sunlight comes in. And it cut our air conditioning bills by 30% simply because there's no sun coming in. And there's a space between these louvers and the glass. And those glass are not fixed glass, they're sliding glass windows. So many times in the year, they just slide the windows open. They don't use air conditioning at all. The management wanted air conditioning. I was against it. I think this building could easily survive without any air conditioning. But at one point, they did a calculation, I can't vouch for it, that they saved enough electricity because of these louvers to pay for the whole building in 21 years. So by being a green building, we talk about the economics of green buildings. I think green buildings pay for themselves, and they certainly pay for the health care of the people living and working in them, which is something we should start talking about also. Because this is a fun building to work in. You can actually see through these louvers and see the back borders, and it's a very pleasant place to work and live. Now, another building, which I'm not going to go into in great detail, is the Samudra Institute of Maritime Studies. This is the workshop. This is a very long, 90-meter long workshop. This wall you're looking at is a photovoltaic wall. It's a 90-meter long wall, and I think it produces 90 kV of electricity. And it also filters the light. So on the inside, it's almost like a stained glass window of a church. You get this lovely bluish, blackish, and we chose two different types of Tata BP. So this is the workshop in the Nobler. And instantly, there are no fans in this building. I don't even think we have any major electric lights. This is their administration building, more photovoltaic cells. Now, what we're really trying to say here is that a lot of our friends, when they do solar energy, they put big fields next to the project, and they need to be, it's like an alien part of the building. So I'm trying to say that actually this is like a Mondrian painting, that you can use photovoltaics and it can be part of the design, it can be part of the structure. Wind energy, incidentally, is still cheaper than photovoltaics. Maybe easy to manage because somebody else does it in a wind energy farm. But that's debatable. This is the inside of this workshop. On the left, that's the north wall, which lights up most of the workshop. What was great about that factory is that they don't turn on any lights, they don't have any fans, and they're actually saving the electricity for nighttime use. Now the next one, which I'm just touching briefly on, is the Forge Marshall factory in Pune. On the right you see the main boiler factory, and you can see at the top there are openings for the hot air to come out. On the south facade there's this huge galley, which we had some computer software to decide how big to make the holes in the galley, to sort of cut the heat and let as much light in as possible. So we were trying to do an optimization between that. And inside the factory, you get a space like this, where again, we don't use any artificial lighting. There's skylights above those trusses, and we get enough light on the south and the north side of the building to light up the factory. And these tubes you see are actually ducts. They're cloth ducts. And there's evaporative cooling at either end of this factory in each of the bays, and the temperature is controlled with that. And we get about 6 to 8 turnovers of air in the building every hour. So it's quite a successful, large-scale factory. Now, my favorite building in the science area, in a climate like Ahmedabad, where it goes up to 45 degrees, in this building, without any air conditioning, they maintain temperatures between 28 and 31 degrees. And in a 24-hour cycle, the temperature year-round never changes more than these 4 degrees. While outside, in one day it may be changing by 17 degrees. It goes down at night when the breezes from the Arabian Sea come in around 8 o'clock. It starts getting cooler, and then it heats up to 45 degrees during the month of April and May. So it has huge climate change. Now those towers on the outside are actually exhaust. The towers are on the outside, they heat up in the sunlight, and they cause an upward draft, which sucks air in the middle over the corridors, and a kind of atrium that goes down into the laboratories and the workspaces. And there are misters up in the top of that inlet. So you get air pulling in, being actually sucked out by these towers on the outside, and that creates a negative on the inside which sucks air in, and there are misters putting mist into the air. And the beauty is that in the section of this building, you have the air coming from the central blue shaft, pretty much at work level, and that's kind of an innovation also, because this is not air-conditioned cold air. This is comfortable air, and it's something that comes in at the working level. And if you can see the red arrow, the hot air goes out through small windows into the vertical tower. So this is a scientific innovation, and it's been monitored over the years, and I think it's something I wanted to talk about because we can all learn a great deal from management rule in Gotham. Unfortunately, Gotham is no longer with us on this world, but this to me is one of the great scientific innovations in sustainable architecture. And what's also nice, I don't want to go back and look at the slides, but you get these kind of attractive architectonic towers that have been done. Now, with my eyesight, I can't read this, but basically what I'm saying is it lowers the temperature from 45 down to 28 to 32. The temperature doesn't change dramatically. Over any given day, you get an airflow inside the rooms. And basically, this is a practically energy-free solution to cooling buildings. Now, green by numbers is what you and I are all involved in. Suzlon One Earth is a company whose business is sustainability. They make wind energy. Now, when I was designing that, I started looking at Indian tradition, and I looked at Padapur Sikri, and I said, wow, that's so nice. It's got beautiful water, a public domain. It's aesthetically sustainable. The ground floors open up right into the garden, and it's a low-rise building. I said I'd like to do all these three things in Suzlon. And then I was working in Cochin earlier, and I came to love deep stones, where you can burn small candles, votive candles. I like the jallies, the controlled sunlight, get air coming. I like the slope roofs. There's an open space, a public domain. Again, I could learn some 4 or 5 things from these temple complexes, which are all over Kerala, all over India, in fact. So my point is we can actually learn architecture by looking at our own culture. Now, this is a site plan of Suzlon on Earth. What I think I'm trying to say here is all the vehicles are kept in the setback in the outside of the plot. There are ramps down into parking underneath. About 500 automobiles can be parked there. There's also a kitchen for the dining hall, which is on that lower level. And also there's the water, the circular water space is actually located at the lower level. And at the upper level, we have gardens and pedestrian areas. So the idea was to separate automobiles from people, let people have their own domain, have a Brahmastan, have an open space to the sky, and then you get these inside-outside spaces like these classrooms in the Learning Center, where we have verandas to sit under shade, or in the winter time you can sit out on decks or even in the evening. And then we use louvers to cut the sun and the glare into the spaces. Now, this is a kind of courtyard. We decided to cover the courtyard with photovoltaic cells. In this campus, we produce about 9% of the energy on campus with smaller windmills, photovoltaics, and then there's a lot of power-saving devices. And in any case, all of the energy here is non-carbon in the sense that it's all produced either 9% on campus. You can see the louvers, which cut the sun on it, and at nighttime the louvers look like this. You can see through them. So they don't cut views. You can actually see through them. They're slightly at an angle to completely stop any sun hitting the glass walls behind. At the lower level, you have a dining hall. 800 people can eat at a time. And then the water comes down this waterfall. And there's a deep stump with LED lights that light up at night. So we tried to bring some tradition into a very modern and corporate building, which is a global company. So we thought the deep stump is something you can always orient yourself. You can look out of any of the lobbies and you can see this deep stump and you know where you are. I'd like to talk about Griha cities. And I'd like to talk about green people, but I really mean Griha villages. No? And how can we as a Griha movement tie in with things like the Smart Cities movement, covering about 100 cities. And there's a new thing which started about 6 months ago called livable indices, livable cities, which is attached to the Smart Cities movement. But I also want to make a point of formal city versus the informal city. I recently wrote a chapter for a book for the University of California Urban Planning System, where I made a point that a city like Pune is an informal city. 80% of the people live in some form of informal housing. Even our formal government is actually operating informally, and our economy, about 60% of it is in the informal sector. So there's this interesting problem we have of two cities in one, and if you look at the city of Pune, you only tend to think of one city. Now, I can't really read this Smart Cities program. You might be able to read it. I think it's too fuzzy for you also. But if I read the 14 projects, they're all Griha ideas. They're green buildings, they're sustainable transport, they're sustainable lighting, they have to do with solid waste collection, they have to do with sewage, they have to do almost everything, including sustainable transportation. It could be turned into a Griha cities movement kind of a vision paper or document. I feel we should move forward and we should piggyback onto these projects. Smart Cities is big in India. It's in 100 cities. Now, after doing Smart Cities, I'll give you an example. Smart Cities in my city is all Smart Cities have pilot areas. The pilot area in Pune is Alund, Benninger, and Benninger. Now, these could be three of the richest per capita income-wise wards in our city. We're not covering any slums, we're not covering urban villages, we're not covering workers' habitat. We have thousands of workers from North India building buildings in Pune. So we're not covering really about 70–60% of the population who lives in informal sector, unhygienic, poor sustainability projects. Now the livability indexes, again I can't read this from here, but there are some institutional factors, there are some social factors, economic factors, and physical. Now physical scared me because I thought it would be flyovers and expressways, but actually if you see the physical ones, they're mainly things like sewage, taps for slum dwellers. And how would you get the livability index? There are 77 factors on which you'll do ratings. For example, one of them would be water supply. Now, if every house in your city has water in the house, you get 100% of that, one of those 77 points now. But each point is divided into two parts. It's divided into the core and the support. The core, you get 70% of a point, and the support, you get 30. So supposing you miraculously have water supply to every house in your city, you get 100 points there, but you only have metering in half of them. So in the 70%, you get 70, and in the 30% of supporting, you only get 35% or 15%, sorry. So it's an interesting index. I think it's well thought out. And the objective is in 10 years to bring the level of the pilot area up to the level of, I think it's Melbourne, Australia, Portland, Oregon, which are very smart and cities according to the Smart Cities movement. But I said, you know that the personal purchasing power of the people living in these 3 wards, I'm going to guess that it's higher than the people, middle-class people living in these 2 pilot benchmark cities. We're actually richer than they are. We have more purchasing power. So you're telling us that we would be coming up to their level in 10 years, but in fact, the people living in these 3 wards actually earn more money than they do. The infrastructure is poor, the facilities are poor, the services are poor, but why are we doing this? For rich people. Why aren't we working in the slums of Pune? If smart cities want to make an impact on the people of India, they should work in slums, urbanized villages, illegal layouts, labor camps, these kind of places. So I think to be effective, we have to reach the people of India, and we have to make them participatory. Now, it's something that works on smartphones. I'm not going to call it an app, it's actually a software platform on which you can participate in mapping your city's stresses. Now on that platform, it's with Google Locator, wherever you are, it's located. The idea is you can push sewage overflowing in the street, one of those icons. You will send a message to your local corporator, you will send a message to the person in charge of sewage in the municipal corporation, the official. It will put a dot on the map that says there's sewage overflowing here. There'll be 3 kinds of maps. I hope I can remember this properly. One is a map of the city, showing all the stresses. You can show solid waste on the street lights not working, sewage overflowing, potholes in the road. There are more than 20 variables on this right now. Or you could look at a map of your neighborhood. So it's something where a 10th standard kid can look at his own neighborhood and he can say, look, there's sewage getting out in these places. There's solid waste on the road in these places. There's street lights not working here. There's no water supply in this pocket. There's no sewage in this pocket. They're using septic tanks. So he gets a map of his neighborhood. Or the 3rd map, supposing you want a map of Pune that just shows sewage overflowing. So one map of Pune shows all the stresses and you can see the high stress areas. Another map would show only sewage, or only solid waste problems, or only street lights not existing perhaps, or not working. So this is a citizen participatory apparatus. It's also empirical. It's based on what's actually happening. It also involves all the stakeholders. It involves people, it involves elected officials, it involves the administration who's in charge of sewage, in charge of streetlights, in charge of whatnot. And it's got a system of reporting. So you report sewage overflowing, and it's reported to the concerned official and to your local corporator. Then you can get a report later, because that is a little click. It's like your WhatsApp. When the official answers this and says that he's seen it, you get a click, and then you can go back and get a report. And this is going to be a major thing in Pune, with kids actually mapping stresses in their own cities. So from kids it will go to adults, but we would train the secondary school children, particularly in public schools as well as private, and get people involved in their city. And I think it's a wonderful idea. Now, livability I've talked about, and I say we have a first city and a second city, and if livability really is going to be effective, it would measure the entire city. Pune is a city of the Peshwas, it's a city of the Marathas, it's a city that ruled the whole of India. So people in Maharashtra, they say this is Pune, historic city. Then there's a lot of other people all over India who say, no, it's not a historic city. This is an IT city. It's a city of young people, smart people, and it's also a city of animation. 80% of films made by Disney World, the animation is done in Pune. Many people don't know that. So it's an upper middle class, high-tech, freewheeling city with high streets. This is not a shopping mall, it's a high street. In Baliwadi, maybe 3 minutes walk from my house. So this is what people think Pune is. But I say, no, this is not Pune. This is hardly a small percentage of the people in Pune. This is Pune. People live in chawls, they live in slums, they live in villages. This is where 70–75% of the people live. Now, I drew this map to show the center of the city, any housing built there, the EMIs, the equated monthly installments, are so high, only 3% of the metropolitan area population of 10 million people could ever afford to buy an apartment. in that central circle. The same thing is true with Bombay. South of the airport, 3%. North of the airport up to Tommy, another 6%. My second circle, only 6% of the people can afford that. So in the whole metropolitan area, if I take these two circles, only 9% of the people can even think of living in a new accommodation close to the city. Of course, there are many people in slums, there are urbanized villages, there are workers' quarters also overlapping this. And in that outer circle, another 17%. In Bombay, another 17 people can live up to Karjat, Ullasnagar, those areas, 2 hours train ride from the city. So we live in a society in which people are excluded from buying any kind of shelter. I would say roughly 75% of the people cannot afford any kind of housing being offered in the market today. Now there are many of my friends like Ashok Lal who's trying to attack this by designing very low income small units now. So this is one of the approaches. I think we should look at those approaches. But this is the income distribution in Pune. Again, I don't have my glasses, but I want to say that 5% of the population, they're probably migrants from Vidarbha or other states, but they live at subsistency. That is, they spend 85% of whatever income they have on food and the fuel to cook it. They may live under flyover infrastructure, they may live under railway carriages, whatnot. They live on the street, basically. And then another large percent of people are in what is called the urban poor. And if you read Ranjit Siddiqui's recent articles about Delhi, it's a very similar situation. If you look at the large slums around Delhi, the workers' quarters, the urbanized villages, a very large percentage of our cities are actually poor and sustainable. And then you get a large lower middle class, and then you get, a fairly substantial group of wealthy people, upper middle class and middle class. So what I'm trying to say is that we live in a world where when we do Terry Griha billings, our clients are in the wealthy group, upper middle class group, and that's the group that we're catering to. Why don't we have a strategy to get out of that and have Griha cities, have Griha villages now? So this is those bottom three groups, subsistency, poor, lower middle class. These are based on actual surveys of people done by Center for Development Studies and Activities in Pune, and we even did this in other cities now. So if you look at the really poor people in the cities, you can see how much they spend on food, how much they spend on clothing, etc., etc., etc. And you can see that people in India have different consumption patterns than we people sitting in this audience have. They live in a different world than we live in. They live in different shelter systems than we live in. They use different transport, and we simply are out of touch with reality in India. And I say I put poor people, but they're not poor people. These are typical Indian citizens of cities now. So I think we should be aware of that. We have systems in India like slum upgradation. I mentioned many of the good things which are happening in many cities and many slums, making them more sustainable. Can we have integrated projects instead of 2,000 hectares of lands for bodies with only factories and maybe some railway lines? Now, can we put low-cost housing in SEZs and make them special habitat zones? Can those special habitat zones have primary schools, basic health facilities? Can they have technical training to prepare people to work in industry? This country has to expand manufacturing and has to create jobs in factories. You wouldn't realize, though, manufacturing has increased in gross numbers over the last 20 years, but as a percentage of the economy, agriculture has gone way down and services have gone way up. We've increased the service sector, but manufacturing has grown along with the growth of the economy, but it's percentage-wise of the gross national product, it's the same as it was 20 years ago. I think I'll just draw it to an end there. That's the end of my talk. My head didn't get cut off by Sanjay, and I thank you very much. Thank you.